Darius was 39 years old, made a steady $71,000 a year as a senior commercial HVAC estimator, and believed, with the quiet certainty of a man who trusts the foundation of his own house, that his life was stable. He lived in a modest but clean two-bedroom unit in a Powderhorn fourplex, drove a paid-off 2012 Toyota Camry with 187,000 miles on the odometer, and thought his marriage to Tamika was, if not a grand romance, then a solid partnership. He was a man who understood the mechanics of things, the way pressure and temperature and flow rates determined comfort. He believed life worked the same way. You put in the work, you maintained the system, and it ran smoothly. Then, on a Tuesday evening at 7:14 p.m., the system failed. He was sitting at their small, $250 IKEA dining table, reviewing a blueprint for a downtown office building, when his phone buzzed. It was a text from Marcus, a mutual friend, a man Darius had known since high school. The text contained a single screenshot. No explanation, just the image. It was from a group chat named Tamika's Freedom. 23 people were in it. The message at the bottom, glowing in a green bubble, was from his wife. It was time-stamped just an hour earlier. "It's official. Divorce papers filed. Finally free of that dead weight. Drinks on me this Friday at Loring Social. Let's celebrate." Darius stared at the words. Dead weight. The phrase seemed to disconnect from reality, floating in the air in front of him. He looked around the small apartment he had so carefully maintained. He'd fixed the leaky faucet under the sink himself, saving them a $200 plumber bill. He'd repainted the living room a soft gray she'd picked out, a $150 expense in paint and supplies he'd covered. He thought of the extra shifts he'd picked up to help her pay for the certification course for her project management career, an online program that had cost them $4,500. He was the one who packed her lunch every morning, who made sure her white BMW 3 Series, a $43,000 car she insisted was essential for her image, had gas and its oil changed on time. Dead weight. The words didn't compute with the physics of his life. He felt the cold dread of a man watching a pressure gauge spike into the red zone, knowing an explosion was imminent, and there was absolutely nothing he could do to stop it. He heard her key in the lock. Have you ever had a moment where the world you thought you knew was revealed to be a lie? Tell us about a time you discovered something that changed everything. We read every comment. Tamika walked in, her $8,700 Armani suit looking impossibly sharp against the backdrop of their humble apartment. She dropped her $1,800 Louis Vuitton handbag on the counter with a sigh of exhaustion. "Long day," she said, not looking at him. "These clients are going to be the death of me." She saw the phone in his hand, still lit up, her own words reflected in his eyes. He didn't have to say a thing. He just turned the screen toward her. Her face, a carefully constructed mask of professional poise, didn't crumble. It froze. Their life together had been a study in contrasts, a quiet tug-of-war between his practicality and her ambition. Darius was a man of substance, not style. He wore $40 Dickies work pants and steel-toed boots that cost $120 but lasted for 5 years. His prized possession was a set of German-made HVAC gauges that had cost him $600 a decade ago and still worked perfectly. He found satisfaction in the hum of a well-balanced system, in the precise calculations that turned a sweltering office into a cool, productive space. His world was one of unseen infrastructure, the vital systems that made modern life comfortable. He was proud of his work, of the skill it took to estimate the cost and complexity of a multi-million-dollar installation. He knew his $71,000 salary wasn't flashy, but it was honest, earned through expertise and a reputation for being meticulous. Tamika, on the other hand, lived in the world of appearances. She was a junior project manager at a boutique marketing firm, a job that paid her $85,000 a year but demanded an image that cost far more. Her closet was a catalog of debt. There was the $2,400 Burberry dress she wore to a single company gala, the collection of Christian Louboutin shoes with their signature red soles, each pair costing upwards of $900. She spoke of brands as if they were old friends and believed the right label could open any door. Their home was the primary battlefield for their opposing philosophies. Darius had wanted to save for a down payment on a small house in a quiet neighborhood, a tangible asset. Tamika argued for renting. "We need to be flexible, Darius," she'd say, scrolling through listings for downtown lofts with exposed brick and price tags of $3,000 a month. An image of success attracts more success. Nobody gets a promotion by living in the suburbs. They compromised on the Powderhorn Fourplex, a clean but unremarkable place that cost them $1,400 a month. It was a constant source of frustration for her. "I can't bring clients here," she would complain, gesturing at the worn but serviceable carpet. "It's embarrassing. It screams mediocrity." He remembered one Saturday afternoon vividly. He was on his back, under the kitchen sink, a $15 P-trap replacement kit beside him, his hands grimy with plumbing grease. He was saving them that $200 plumber fee. Tamika walked in, dressed for brunch with her friends in a $600 Diane von Furstenberg wrap dress. She looked down at him, her lip curled in a way that was meant to look playful, but landed as pure condescension. "Still playing with your tools, baby?" she asked. "You know, my friend Jessica's husband just closed a big deal. He's taking her to Paris for the week. He works in finance. He doesn't have to fix his own sink." Darius just tightened the last PVC nut. He wiped his hands on a rag. "Well, this sink won't be leaking anymore," he said, his voice flat. "That's what matters." He didn't understand that to her the leak wasn't the problem. The problem was that he was the kind of man who had to fix it himself. He represented a world of practical, unglamorous reality she was desperate to escape. She didn't see his work as a skill. She saw it as a limitation, a ceiling on her own ascent. His worn $89 Timex watch was a constant, quiet rebuke to her leased BMW and the mountain of credit card debt she called a lifestyle. He provided stability. She craved status. And in her mind, the two were mutually exclusive. He was the anchor holding her yacht in a humble harbor, and she was ready to cut the rope. The confrontation in their living room was unnervingly quiet. There was no shouting, no throwing of plates, just the cold, sterile silence of a system that had finally, catastrophically, failed. Tamika looked at the screenshot on his phone, then at his face. Her expression shifted from shock to a kind of weary resignation, as if he'd caught her in a lie she was tired of telling. "So you saw that," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. She slipped off her $1,200 Jimmy Choo heels and placed them neatly by the door. It was a gesture of domesticity that felt obscene in its normalcy. "Dead weight, Tamika?" Darius's voice was raspy. The words felt foreign in his mouth. "After 12 years, that's what I am to you? Something you discard?" She sighed, a long, theatrical exhalation of impatience. "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Darius. It's just words. It's a group chat with my girls. It's how we talk. You filed for divorce and didn't tell me? You planned a party?" "I was going to tell you tonight," she said, walking to the kitchen and pulling a bottle of San Pellegrino from their $1,200 stainless steel refrigerator. "I wanted to wait for the right moment." "The right moment?" He laughed, a short, bitter sound that held no humor. "Was that before or after you sent the party invitations to 23 of our, well, I guess your friends?" She turned, leaning against the counter, the picture of detached cool. "Look, this isn't working. It hasn't been working for years. I want more." I want a life that isn't about fixing leaky pipes and counting every penny. I want a partner who is an equal, someone with drive, with ambition. The insult was clear. His steady, reliable career was, in her eyes, a lack of ambition. His careful financial planning was penny-pinching. His entire identity as a provider and a partner was being reframed as a liability. An equal, he repeated slowly. I paid for your PMP certification. I've supported every single career move you've made. I work 60 hours a week sometimes, so you can have that $43,000 car and your designer clothes. And I appreciate that, she said, her tone dismissive, as if appreciating it absolved her of the cruelty. It was a nice starter marriage, but I've outgrown it. I've outgrown this. She waved a hand around their small apartment. People at my level, they have lake houses in Edina. They don't live in fourplexes in Powderhorn. The cruelty escalated in the days that followed. She moved out with chilling efficiency, hiring a moving company for $800 that Darius knew they couldn't afford. He watched as they packed her endless boxes of clothes, shoes, and bags. He stood by as they wrapped the $3,000 West Elm sofa she'd bought on a credit card he was a co-signer on. She took everything that signified expense and left behind everything that signified their shared life. The worn armchair he liked to read in, the photos of them from their early, happier years, the sturdy wooden bed frame he'd built with his own hands. The final blow came that Friday. He was at home, surrounded by the ghosts of their furniture, when his phone began to buzz with notifications. Friends, who were clearly at her party, were posting pictures. There she was, in the center of a laughing crowd at the chic, expensive Loring social. She was wearing a glittering, $700 cocktail dress, holding a glass of champagne. In one photo, someone had brought a cake. Written in celebratory icing were the words, "Finally unburdened." In another photo, a video, he could hear her voice, loud and clear over the music as she gave a toast. "To cutting off the dead weight," she shouted, and her friends cheered. "And to finally being with a man who understands my worth." That was it. The final piece of the puzzle. There was someone else. The betrayal wasn't just an ending. It was an overlap. His 12 years of loyalty, of fixing sinks and packing lunches, had been a placeholder. He sat in the empty living room, the silence pressing in on him. He felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just a profound, hollow emptiness. The system hadn't just failed, it had been rigged from the start. He was the boiler in the basement, humming away reliably while she was living on the penthouse floor, already planning to replace the whole building. He had been underestimated, and in that moment, a cold, hard resolve began to form in the pit of his stomach. He would not break. He would rebuild. The 3 years that followed were a blur of focused, relentless work. Darius funneled all the pain, all the humiliation, into a singular purpose. He lived like a monk, pouring every spare dollar and every waking hour into his craft. He sold the fourplex unit they had shared and moved into a tiny, $900 a month studio apartment in Whittier. He sold the Camry and bought a used work van, a 2008 Ford E250, for $7,500 cash. It was dented and ugly, but it ran perfectly and held all his tools. He ate simple meals, stopped going out, and saved money with a ferocity that bordered on obsession. He took every overtime shift offered at his job with Northland Mechanical Services. He became their go-to guy for the toughest jobs, the ones no one else wanted. While his colleagues were heading home at 5 p.m., Darius was on a rooftop in the freezing Minneapolis winter, calibrating a complex VAV system, his fingers numb but his mind sharp. He earned a reputation for being the best estimator in the city. His proposals were things of beauty, precise, accurate, and always competitive. He wasn't just estimating jobs, he was studying them, reverse engineering the business itself. He learned about profit margins, supplier contracts, labor costs, and client acquisition. He saw the inefficiencies, the places where a smarter, leaner company could thrive. His boss, a man named Frank who was nearing retirement, saw Darius's drive, but misinterpreted its source. "You're a machine, Darius," Frank would say, clapping him on the back. "But don't burn yourself out. Go home. Live a little." Darius would just nod, a tight smile on his face. He had no interest in living a little. He was building something. He used his evenings to get every certification the industry offered: NATE, EPA 608 Universal, HVAC Excellence. He spent $8,000 of his savings on advanced courses in commercial project management and business administration at a local community college. He was no longer just a technician. He was becoming a strategist. Meanwhile, he heard whispers of Tamika's new life. Through the grapevine of old mutual friends, he learned she had moved into a stunning lakefront rental in Edina with her new partner, a senior vice president at a financial firm. The rent was rumored to be over $5,000 a month. She posted photos of trips to Italy, of ski weekends in Aspen, of charity galas where she wore gowns that cost more than his work van. She was living the life she'd always wanted, a life built on image and funded by someone else's success. Each photo, each whispered rumor, was another log on the fire inside him. It wasn't jealousy he felt. It was fuel. The opportunity came a year and a half after the divorce. Frank, his boss, announced his retirement. He was looking to sell Northland Mechanical Services, a solid company with a 30-year history and a loyal client base, for a fair price of $450,000. But he wanted to sell to someone who would care for his employees and his clients, not some big, faceless corporation. Darius went to the Small Business Administration. He took his years of perfect credit, his detailed business plan, and the $120,000 he had saved with his Spartan lifestyle. He secured a loan for the remaining $330,000. To ensure the sale was discreet and to avoid any potential interference from competitors, his lawyer helped him form a blind name LLC, Polaris Holdings Group. To the outside world, Northland Mechanical Services had been acquired by an anonymous investment group. Even the employees didn't know the new owner's identity at first. On the first day under new management, Darius walked into the office not as a senior estimator, but as the president and CEO. The shock on his colleagues' faces was palpable, but it quickly turned to respect. They knew him. They trusted his work. He promoted his most talented colleagues, gave everyone a 10% raise, and invested $50,000 in new diagnostic equipment and software. Under his leadership, the company didn't just grow, it exploded. He used his intimate knowledge of the business to trim fat, renegotiate supplier contracts, and bid on larger, more profitable projects. Within 2 years, Northland Mechanical was the premier commercial HVAC contractor in the Twin Cities. They landed a $5 million contract for a new hospital wing and a $12 million contract for a corporate headquarters downtown. Darius, the man once called deadweight, was now at the helm of a company with annual revenues exceeding $20 million. He still drove his old work van, but he now lived in a comfortable but unpretentious house in Kenwood that he'd bought for $750,000 in cash. His net worth was quietly climbing into the millions. He had rebuilt his life not on image, but on the solid foundation of competence and hard work. And he had no idea that the past was about to walk right through his front door. It was a Monday morning, 3 years and 4 months after the divorce. The specific date was October 23rd. At 9:42 a.m., an email landed in Darius's inbox. The subject line was simple: Promising candidate for senior PM opening. It was from Sarah, his head of human resources, a sharp, efficient woman he had hired 6 months prior. Darius was in his spacious but functional office, a corner unit with glass walls that overlooked the Minneapolis skyline. The office wasn't ostentatious. The furniture was from a practical office supply company, not a designer showroom. The only personal touch was a large framed schematic of a complex geothermal exchange system, a project he was particularly proud of. He clicked open the email. Sarah's note was brief. Darius, this applicant has an impressive resume with direct experience at J Corp, one of our main competitors. PMP certified with 8 years of experience. Seems like a strong fit for the downtown corporate tower project. Let me know if you want to bring her in. Resume attached. He moved his cursor and clicked on the PDF attachment. It loaded instantly. The name at the top of the page made the air in his lungs turn to ice. Tamika Williams. She hadn't even changed her last name, his name, the one she had been so eager to shed. He felt a strange, detached calm settle over him, the kind a pilot must feel when the engines cut out at 30,000 feet. The world narrowed to the glowing rectangle of the document on his screen. He read through it, his eyes scanning the familiar buzzwords and action verbs. Managed cross-functional teams, delivered projects under budget, spearheaded client-facing initiatives. Then he saw it, under the experience section. Her most recent position, Senior Project Manager, J Corp Marketing Solutions, Minneapolis, Minnesota, 2021 to present. He remembered J Corp. It was the firm of the man she had left him for, the senior vice president. It seemed that relationship, like her marriage to Darius, had reached its expiration date. Below that was her previous role at the boutique firm she'd been at when they were married. The irony was a physical thing, a bitter taste in his mouth. She was applying for a job at a company built on the very trade she had mocked. The dead weight was now in a position to determine her future. He looked at her listed skills: strategic planning, risk management, client relations. Nowhere on the list did it say loyalty or integrity. He leaned back in his $600 ergonomic office chair, a stark contrast to the hard IKEA chair where he'd first seen her cruel text message. He looked out the window at the glass towers of the city, structures kept comfortable and functional by the work of men like him, the work she had despised. He could feel the thrum of the building's HVAC system through the floor, a steady, powerful heartbeat. His system, his world. He thought back to that night, to the humiliation, to the public celebration of his erasure. He remembered the cake, the toast, the laughter. For 3 years, he had buried that pain under a mountain of blueprints, contracts, and hard work. He had thought it was gone, turned into the concrete and steel of his new life. But it wasn't gone. It was just dormant, waiting. And now, with a single click, it had been awakened. He felt a cold, clear purpose crystallize within him. This was not about revenge. Revenge was messy, emotional. This was about something else. It was about balance. It was about a system returning to equilibrium. He took a deep breath, the air cool and clean, perfectly conditioned. He typed a reply to Sarah. His fingers were steady on the keyboard. Sarah, thank you. Yes, she looks very promising. Please schedule an interview. I'd like to sit in on it myself, along with David and Maria from the project team. Let's book the main conference room for Thursday at 10 a.m. He hit send. The trap was set. The days leading up to the interview were a masterclass in strategic restraint. On the surface, Darius was the same focused, unflappable CEO he had been every day for the past 2 years. He led the Tuesday morning project meeting, dissecting the logistics of the hospital wing installation with his usual precision. He spent Wednesday afternoon on a call with their primary supplier, negotiating a 5% discount on a bulk order of commercial-grade air handlers, a move that would save the company $250,000 over the next quarter. To his employees, he was simply doing his job. Inside, however, a quiet, meticulous operation was underway. He was playing dumb, feigning a normal hiring process while orchestrating a moment of reckoning he had never asked for but now felt compelled to see through. The first step was retrieving the evidence. He scrolled back through 3 years of archived photos on his personal cloud storage. It took him 20 minutes, but he found it. The screenshot Marcus had sent him. The group chat, Tamika's freedom. Her message, sharp and cruel. The timestamp. The list of 23 names. He saved the image to a new folder on his desktop, naming it simply Thursday. He then called David, his head of operations, and Maria, his top project manager, into his office. They were his 2 most trusted employees, both of whom he had promoted from within. They were loyal, not just to the company, but to him. He closed the glass door. "I need to talk to you both about the senior PM candidate we have coming in on Thursday," he began, his voice even. "Her name is Tamika Williams." He told them everything. He didn't editorialize or inject emotion into the story. He laid out the facts with the same dispassionate clarity he used to describe a mechanical schematic. He told them about the divorce, the condescension toward his trade, and the group text. He then turned his monitor around and showed them the screenshot. Maria, a sharp woman in her 40s with a no-nonsense demeanor, stared at the screen. Her eyes narrowed. David, a big, steady man who had worked at Northland for 15 years, just slowly shook his head. "That's cold, Darius," David said, his voice low. "Stone cold." "I'm not telling you this to poison the well," Darius said calmly. "I want you to conduct a fair and thorough interview. Ask her about her experience, her skills, her management style. Give her a chance to make her case. But at the end of the interview, I am going to ask one final question, and I will need your help to do it." He laid out the plan. It was simple, elegant, and devastating. He wasn't going to yell or accuse. He was going to use the sterile tools of the corporate world, a conference room, a projector, a professional line of questioning, to hold up a mirror. "Are you both comfortable with this?" he asked. "If not, I understand. I can handle it myself." Maria looked from the screen to Darius's calm face. "Darius, after everything you've done for us, for this company, we've got your back." She made her bed. "Let's see how she likes lying in it." David nodded in agreement. "Consider it done." The lie he had to maintain was one of normalcy. When Sarah, his HR head, stopped by his office to confirm the interview slot, he put on a professional smile. "Yes, 10 a.m. is perfect," he said. "Her resume is one of the strongest we've seen. I'm very interested to see if she's a good cultural fit for us." The phrase hung in the air after she left. Cultural fit. Culture was about shared values, respect, and integrity. It was about understanding that every role, from the CEO to the technician installing ductwork, was vital to the success of the whole. It was everything Tamika had sneered at. He was about to give her the most thorough cultural fit interview of her life. He spent the rest of the day in a state of hyper-focus, his mind a quiet, humming machine, counting down the hours. Darius's strategic planning was meticulous, like designing the airflow for a clean room where the slightest impurity could ruin everything. This wasn't a meeting of vengeance, it was an audit of character, and every detail had to be precise. He reserved the main conference room, a space on the top floor with a massive 20-foot mahogany table that had cost him $15,000. It was a room designed to impress, to project power and stability. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the Minneapolis skyline, a constant reminder of the world his company helped build. He instructed his assistant to set the room up not for a cozy chat, but for a formal presentation. A pitcher of ice water and 4 glasses, one at each of the 4 seats they would occupy at the head of the table. a notepad, and a company-branded pen, a sleek silver ballpoint worth about $10 at each place. On the 80-inch screen at the front of the room, he had the company logo, a stylized compass rose with the name Northwind Mechanical, beneath it, displayed in a crisp professional blue. Northwind was the new name he'd given the company, a nod to the cold, powerful force that drove him. He met with David and Maria an hour before the interview, at 9 a.m. sharp. They went over the plan one last time. Phase 1 is the standard interview, Darius instructed, his voice low and steady. Maria, I want you to lead with questions about her project management methodology. Ask about specific projects at J Corp. Get her talking about budgets, timelines, and team management. Let her build her confidence. Maria nodded, her pen poised over her notes. Got it. I'll ask her to walk us through a challenging project and how she handled it. David, Darius continued, you take phase 2. Focus on the technical side. Ask her about her experience interfacing with trades, how she communicates with engineers, electricians, and specifically HVAC contractors. See how she talks about the people who do the actual work. David grunted his assent. I want to hear what she calls them. Subcontractors? The trades? The grunts? Exactly, Darius said. Just listen. Don't challenge, just listen. I will mostly observe during these phases. I'll ask a few follow-up questions about long-term strategy, but I want her to feel like this is a normal, if challenging interview. Let her believe she's winning you over. He paused, looking at his 2 trusted colleagues. Phase 3 is mine. After you've both finished, I'll say I have one final question about cultural fit. Maria, that's your cue. You'll say you need to pull up a document on the screen. The file, Thursday.jpg, is already saved to the conference room desktop in a folder called Shared Projects. He had thought about every detail, the generic folder name, the innocuous file name. Nothing to arouse suspicion. You'll open the image, he said, his eyes meeting Maria's. You'll maximize it to fill the screen, and then you will all just sit there, in silence. You don't say a word. You just look at her. The image will do all the talking. I will let the silence stretch until it becomes unbearable. Then I will handle the rest. He had transferred $1.5 million from the company's operating account to its payroll account that morning. It was an unnecessary gesture. Payroll wasn't for another week, but he wanted to see the number in the balance. It was a tangible measure of his success, a silent counter-argument to the words that would soon be displayed on the screen. He, the deadweight, was responsible for the livelihoods of 150 employees and their families. Their combined salaries totaled over $12 million a year. His company was a force for stability and prosperity in their lives. He had built something real, something that mattered. And now, the woman who saw him as nothing was about to ask him for a piece of it. The system was about to find its balance. At 9:58 a.m., Darius, David, and Maria took their seats at the head of the mahogany conference table. The room was cool and quiet, the air perfectly filtered. Through the glass walls, Darius could see the hum of his company at work. Engineers collaborating over blueprints, accountants processing invoices, dispatchers coordinating technician schedules. It was a complex, thriving ecosystem he had built. At precisely 10 a.m., his assistant's voice came through the intercom. Mr. Sterling, your 10 o'clock appointment is here. Shall I send her in? Yes, please, Carol, thank you, Darius replied, his voice calm. The heavy oak door swung open and Tamika walked in. She looked confident, polished, and expensive. She wore a tailored navy blue pantsuit that likely cost over $2,000 and carried a sleek leather portfolio. She had aged well, but there was a hardness around her eyes that hadn't been there before. Her smile was bright, professional, and completely artificial. It faltered for a fraction of a second as her eyes met Darius's. A flicker of confusion, of disbelief, crossed her face before she quickly masked it. She had clearly not made the connection between Northwind Mechanical and her ex-husband's old employer. "Darius?" she said, her voice a little shaky. "What are you—" Darius stood, extending a hand, his expression neutral. "Tamika, it's been a while. I'm Darius Sterling, the CEO of Northwind. Please have a seat. This is David Allen, our head of operations, and Maria Sanchez, our lead project manager." Her face went pale. The blood seemed to drain from her cheeks as the reality of the situation crashed down on her. The man whose career she had openly mocked was the CEO of the company she was desperate to work for. She shook their hands mechanically, her grip weak and clammy. She sat down, her confident posture deflating. The interview began as planned. Maria launched into her questions, her tone professional and crisp. "So, Tamika, your resume says you managed the retail rollout for Omnicorp. Can you walk us through the project scope and the final budget?" Tamika struggled to regain her composure. She fumbled with her portfolio, her voice tight and strained as she tried to answer. "Yes, of course. The Omnicorp, it was a multi-site deployment, very complex." She recited facts and figures, but the confident flow of corporate jargon was gone, replaced by a halting, uncertain delivery. She was rattled, her mind clearly racing to process the impossible situation she was in. David followed up, his questions probing and direct. "Your role would require constant coordination with our field teams. Tell me about your experience working with skilled trades. How do you ensure clear communication with foremen on a busy job site?" "Communication is key," she said, the answer a hollow platitude. "I believe in open channels and respecting the expertise of the workers." The word workers came out awkwardly, as if she had to force it past her teeth. Darius watched her, his face an unreadable mask. He saw the panic in her eyes, the desperate attempt to salvage the interview, to pretend this was normal. She was performing, trying to sell an image of competence to the man whose substance she had discarded. He let her talk for 45 minutes. He let her spin her tales of corporate success, all while the screenshot sat waiting on the desktop, a digital landmine. Finally, when David and Maria had finished, a heavy silence settled over the room. Darius leaned forward slightly, folding his hands on the polished table. "Thank you, Tamika," he said, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of the entire room. "I have one final question. It's about company culture. We believe that character and integrity are just as important as skills and experience. We have a zero-tolerance policy for disrespect, especially toward the skilled trades that are the backbone of this company." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Maria, could you please bring up the file in the Shared Projects folder, the one labeled Thursday?" Tamika's eyes darted from Darius to Maria. A look of pure dread washed over her face. She knew. She didn't know how she knew, but she knew this was it. Maria clicked the mouse. The 80-inch screen behind Tamika flickered, and the Northwind logo was replaced by the screenshot. It was massive, undeniable. The name of the group chat, Tamika's Freedom, was in a bold header. The list of 23 names scrolled down the side. And at the bottom, her own words, magnified to a monstrous size. "It's official. Divorce papers filed. Finally free of that dead weight. Drinks on me this Friday at Loring Social. Let's celebrate." The room went completely, utterly silent. The only sound was the faint hum of the HVAC system, Darius's system, circulating cool, clean air. Tamika stared at the screen, her mouth slightly agape. The color drained completely from her face, leaving her with a sickly, gray pallor. Her carefully constructed professional facade didn't just crack, it shattered into a million pieces. She looked from the screen to Darius, then to David, then to Maria. Their faces were impassive, their gazes steady. They were not angry. They were judges. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. A choked, strangled sound escaped her throat. Her eyes welled with tears of pure, unadulterated humiliation. She was exposed. Her cruelty laid bare under the fluorescent lights of the world he had built. Darius let the silence stretch for a full minute. It was the loudest silence he had ever heard. It was filled with the ghosts of 1,000 insults, a decade of condescension, and the echoes of cheering friends at a party celebrating his demise. Finally he spoke, his voice still quiet, still calm. The dead weight you were celebrating getting rid of. That was me. The man who owned the company whose name you didn't even recognize. The company that holds the contracts for the very buildings your old firm, J Corp, operates in. The work you called mediocre is what keeps the lights on and the air breathable in half the city. He stood up, the movement slow and deliberate. We're done here. Thank you for your time. Tamika didn't move. She just sat there, staring at her own words, a ghost at her own execution. David and Maria stood as well, their faces grim. Without another word, they walked out of the conference room, leaving her alone with her shame, illuminated by the glow of her own betrayal. The aftermath for Tamika was a slow, cascading failure. She left the Northwind Mechanical offices in a daze. The image of the screenshot burned into her retinas. The humiliation was absolute. It wasn't just that she didn't get the job. It was the way her past had been so clinically and publicly presented back to her. The consequences began to ripple outward almost immediately. The world of high-level project management in Minneapolis was small. Maria Sanchez, Darius's lead PM, had a professional lunch scheduled the next day with a director from another major construction firm. Over a $45 salad, the director mentioned they were looking to fill a similar role. We had a candidate in yesterday, Tamika Williams, Maria said, her tone neutral. Strong resume, but she wasn't a cultural fit for us. In the coded language of the corporate world, not a cultural fit was a death sentence. It implied a character flaw, a problem with personality or integrity that went beyond mere skills. The director, trusting Maria's judgment, made a mental note to move Tamika's application to the bottom of the pile. Within 2 weeks, Tamika's professional reputation was quietly but effectively shredded. She was a candidate with a red flag next to her name, an unknown problem that made hiring her a risk. Her time at J Corp had ended abruptly when her partner, the senior vice president, had left her for a younger associate. She had been counting on her professional network and stellar resume to land on her feet. But doors that had once been open were now politely but firmly closed. The financial pressure mounted quickly. The $5,000 a month rent on her Adena lakefront apartment, once easily covered by 2 high incomes, became an impossible burden. She burned through her savings, the money she hadn't already spent on her lavish lifestyle, within 3 months. The leased BMW 3 Series, with its $600 monthly payment, was the first thing to go. She returned it to the dealership, breaking the lease and incurring a $4,000 penalty. She was forced to buy a 10-year-old Honda Civic for $8,000, a car she would have sneered at just a year earlier. 4 months after the interview, she was evicted from the Adena apartment. The life of lakeside sunsets and catered parties was over. She moved into a cramped, $1,100 a month one-bedroom apartment in St. Louis Park, a place with aging appliances and a view of a parking lot. Her collection of designer clothes and handbags appeared on luxury consignment websites, sold off piece by piece to cover her mounting credit card debt. The same debt Darius had once helped her manage. The $2,400 Burberry dress sold for $600. The $8,700 Armani suit, the one she wore the night she announced her freedom, fetched a mere $1,500. It was a liquidation of a life built on image. Each sale, a small surrender. She eventually found a job, a junior contract position at a small logistics company, paying $55,000 a year. Less than Darius was making when she left him. She was no longer a high-flying executive. She was just another cog in a machine. Her ambition ground down by the consequences of her own choices. Her downfall wasn't loud or dramatic. It was a quiet, inexorable slide into the very mediocrity she had so desperately tried to escape. She had cut the dead weight, only to find that he was the one holding her up all along. 5 years have passed since that day in the conference room. It is a bright, clear Tuesday in May. Darius stands in his new office, a space even larger and more impressive than the last. Northwind Mechanical now operates in 3 states: Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa. The company is valued at over $50 million, and he is the sole owner. His old work van is long gone, replaced by a modest but comfortable $65,000 Lexus sedan. His life is calm, ordered, and prosperous. On his desk, next to a photo of him and his new wife, a warm and kind architect named Alana, is a framed piece of paper. It's a certificate for the Sterling Skilled Trades Scholarship, a program he founded 2 years ago. Using an initial endowment of $1 million from his personal funds, the scholarship provides full tuition and tool allowances for promising young people from underserved communities to attend trade school. It covers tuition for welding, electrical, plumbing, and of course HVAC programs. Each year, it helps 20 young men and women build a life based on tangible skills, not fleeting images. It's his proudest achievement. He looks out the window, not at the skyline, but down at the community garden he had his company install in the green space next to their corporate headquarters. Employees tend to it on their lunch breaks, growing vegetables and herbs. It's a symbol of what he has built, something that grows, something that sustains. He rarely thinks of Tamika. Her memory is like a faded blueprint for a building that was never constructed. He holds no anger toward her. The interview wasn't an act of revenge. It was an act of truth. It was the moment he fully understood that his worth was never tied to her validation. He had forgiven her long ago, not for her sake, but for his. Forgiveness was the final act of closing out a painful old project file and archiving it away for good. He picks up a letter from the top of a pile. It's from the first recipient of his scholarship, a young woman who just graduated at the top of her HVAC certification program. She writes about how the scholarship changed her life, how it gave her a path to a stable, proud career. She included a photo of herself in her work gear, standing proudly in front of a massive commercial chiller unit, her smile wide and genuine. True wealth, Darius now knows, isn't measured in designer labels or luxury cars. It isn't found in the reflection of other people's envy. True wealth is building something that lasts. It's in the quiet hum of a perfectly balanced system, in the gratitude of a young person given a chance, in the love of a partner who values substance over style. It's the profound satisfaction of knowing you have built your life and your success on a foundation of integrity, hard work, and respect. You can't buy that. You have to earn it. What do you think is the most important foundation for a successful life? Is it wealth, character, or something else entirely? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's continue this conversation. Thank you for being a part of our community,